Perfect. Thank you very much. My name is Gerald Tang. For those of you who I don't know, I am new to St. Francis College, but I look forward to meeting you all. I am the new Assistant Dean for Career Integrations at the Career Center, and I'm excited to get to know all of you as well at the college. But today's session is going to be on resume writing, which is a fundamental topic for many of you who might be exploring opportunity, who are looking for internship, even exploring volunteer opportunity, or even graduate school. Many of you will be asked to have a copy of your documents. Most likely, you're going to hear the word CV or resume, which means that you're going to be expected to provide this document to employer as well. So it's very important for all of you to update the document as you're going through your journey at St. Francis College. So for today's session, I'm going to give you some overview of what to expect, how you can get started with updating your document. If you have a resume already, fantastic. We'll help you to refine your document as well. And we'll give you some tips and advice on how you can go about updating that. So we'll go ahead and get started today. Again, the goal of today's workshop, I hope that you'll be able to describe the purpose of the resume at the end of today's session. And you will be able to list the 4 main sections of the resume, which is the fundamentally most important part of any resume, that you should have these 4 elements. And hope that by the end of today's session, you'll be able to write an effective resume bullet point. That's one of the areas that many students might be stuck in as they are navigating on refining the documents as they are updating the resume. So we will give you some tips and advice on how you can go about doing that today as well. So let's dive right in. The main purpose of a resume, simple, is to help you get an interview. Many people think that by uploading their resume, they will automatically get a job. And the reality of that is that you will get to the beginning stages of that process. Many job seekers will think that when they update a resume, all they're hoping for is just a resume will do the magic in getting you the job. The reality of that is the resumes only get you to the applicant stage, to the interview process. And then from the interview itself, the recruiters or the employers will then start to look at who you are and your qualification to see how much that might match the candidate profile that they're hoping to bring on to their organization. So your ultimate goal for the resume is really to get you to the interview stage. From the interview stage, that becomes about talking about your story, articulating your skill set to convey to the employer that you are the best match. So yes, resume is the fundamentally most important part of the process, but it won't get you to the final, job offer. It will get you to the interview stage. And that's ultimately your goal for any document, to get to somebody who actually wants to learn about you and your experiences itself. So there are really 2 main types of resume format. There's something called chronological format and a functional style resume. Chronological format resume is the most popular and most important part of any, I would say, entry-level talent. If you are somebody who may be currently in school pursuing your undergraduate degree at St. Francis, or even some of you may be pursuing potentially a master's degree or other degree type at St. Francis College, you're going to be expected to have some sort of chronological style resume. What that means is basically a resume that highlights the most recent experiences first, and then in the order of the most recent to the least recent. Means that what you're currently working in, and then it will carry through the history of your employment or your experiences from your document itself. You want to highlight each and every single experience associated with the task and the descriptions of the task in each of the sections of your resume. The functional style resume sometimes is helpful if you have a large employment gap. In other words, if you have, let's say, an extensive year of experiences, you may have some sort of expertise in the industry, and your resume may be very long that you might need to summarize it in a way to highlight some of your expertise. Functional style resume typically recommended for job seekers who have maybe 10 years, 20 years, really experienced candidates who are looking to summarizing their experiences in a short versions of a document, a concise document. That's why the functional resume can come in as well. I would say for all of you, for the purposes for today, I will highly encourage you to use a chronological style resume. That's the one thing that I will say you probably want to stick with if you are looking for internships or entry-level positions while you were at the college or beyond. So these are some of the basics we're going to walk through first, and then we're going to talk about each section in a minute. So what are basics of the resume? First thing I would say for most students that I work with, whether or not it's in Francis or previous institutions, resume should be one page for the most part. If you're looking for private sector industry, it doesn't matter if you are going for business industry or healthcare or even government agency or not-for-profit, for the most part, employer looking for you to have a concise document that highlight who you are. So one page should be sufficient to highlight all of your experiences, regardless of including your leadership activity or volunteer experience or even employment. So having one page is pretty important because the employer want to see how precise are you be able to articulate who you are and your skill set to an employer. It should serve as a writing sample. And I always say resume is something that employer expect you to perfect the document in so many ways that you should provide the best versions of yourself in front of employer, because they expect you to refine your document so many times already. They want to see that you can write. You can be able to pick up on any error, mistake, spelling or typo, anything like that. So that could be, in a nutshell, serve as a writing sample to see how good are you as a writer. Can I trust that you can be able to do the work in my organization? Are you able to communicate effectively? So that's something that you want to think about. And I always encourage you, once you create your documents, definitely come in the Career Center or have any one of the professional staff or even your mentor or your faculty members or other advisor to review your document before you submit them. Because you and I know that when you look at the documents for so long, you might not catch some of those typos or error that might seem to be appropriate, but maybe is an error on your resume. So an example of something that I have worked with students on is when you put in the language skill, for example, you're supposed to put a level of proficiency, right? So a student of mine I work with closely, she put, conversational Spanish, for example. Unfortunately, students missed out the word conversational. So in the resume, the whole time they say conversational Spanish until they come to me and I ask the question, so how do you conserve a language? And the student look at me funny. Well, guess what? Conservational is actually an appropriate word that, words won't pick up as an error, but it's not appropriate in the context of the document itself. So that's an example that you want to have a fresh eye to look at the document. You want somebody to kind of look at the document to kind of check to make sure there's no typo, error, or any minor things like, conservational or conversational Spanish, right? That's an appropriate way to say that. It's a minor changes of spelling, but that can make a big difference from an employer point of view to find out reasons why they don't want to consider you for a job application itself. You want to be concise and clear. Resume is a marketing document. You don't want to go on and on to explain every single thing you have done, but it should project some sort of career interest or places that you actually want to work in. So in other words, if I'm as an employer, I want to scan your document for 30 seconds, I should get an impression, a sense of what you might be interested in or what type of career direction that you are considering doing. So you want to target the industry ultimately when you have experience to get to the point where it does project some sort of career trajectory that you are interested in moving forward with. So a student sometimes asks me the question, should I have multiple interests? What should I do? If that's the case, then I'll encourage you to actually revise and refine your documents and multiple versions of your resume available. So if you're interested in two different distinct industries, you can have 2, 3, or even 4 different versions of your resume available, and we update your content to provide that sort of career interest based on the industry you want to go for. So in other words, your resume doesn't have to be standardized for every single thing you apply for. You can customize it by creating one master document, and then from there, create a specific one for each job you want to go into. Because it's a precise document, it's something that employers expect you to be clear and concise, you won't want to write into paragraph format. So it always say bullet point is probably the easiest thing to read. So you don't want to have any first person's writing throughout your document itself. So avoid any first person writing. So for format Y, you want to have the resume between 1/2 inch or 1 inch margin, that you can go down to 1/2 inch or all 4 corners. You want to have the most important part of your document or your content of your document in the first half of the resume. In other words, is it going to be enough to entice me to continue to read on your document, to really excited to get to know you at the interview stage? When you format your resume, you want to be clean and consistent. Use conservative fonts if you can, Times New Roman, Cambria or Arial, those are fine. Try not to make it too funky and too hard to read, because again, the documents highlight your skill set. You want the content to stand out instead of having the font style to be different to make you apart. Font size can be anything between 10 to 12. It really depends on what the font style will be. For example, Times New Roman for 10 font size is a pretty small font to read, versus, if you use Cambria for 10 font, probably it's appropriate to have. So I always say use a judgment to think about how easy does a person read your document. If the screen test is I need to really pull the raw document close to me to read, means there's too much going on and you probably can refine it. But if it's too big, that means you're trying to fill in the space. So you want to think about the perception of the document in relation to who you are as well. Try not to make everything underlined and bold, italicized. You can use certain level of emphasis on your document, but you don't want to highlight every single line to be bold and italicized. The way I describe to a student is that use your resume, build a format to go from top to bottom to make it clean. Maybe you highlight the first line, but you keep everything else is not the same, then keep the whole section to look the same. You want to train the employer to read the same thing as what you will look at on the whole entire document. So you want to keep all the formatting consistent throughout your document itself. So the 4 core sections, every single employer in all industry can look for these 4 sections. Contact information, ways to contact you, right? Your name, your phone number, your email address, and maybe your location is something that you definitely want to include. We're going to go into that and give you an example of that in a second. Education. Hopefully all of you should have the St. Francis College information on there. If you transfer from another school, study abroad, if you have really great high school you came from, you can potentially include that information under the education section as well. The third part is work experience, some level of combination of work experience. Whether or not work at Starbucks as a barista, or you were babysitters, or you work in an internship setting in a previous experience, those are appropriate things to add on to your document itself. Now, for some of you who may not have work experience at the moment, you can add leadership involvement, club activities, volunteer experience, or any other combination experience to highlight who you are and your ability to work with people. The last section is the skills section. That's a section for including any software skills, language, certification, training, licensure, and so forth are all encompassed in those areas as well. So now these are 4 most important parts of any resume. Doesn't matter where you apply for, they're going to look for some of these elements of your document. Now, the order in which how you put them in can be in discussion. So in some scenario, you may put the skills sections in the second part, right after your contact information, so that you can highlight your technical skill set, maybe your software skills or your training. So for others, maybe you put the education up front, but if you work extensively in the industry for 10 years, your education may go down to the bottom of that resume, because what you're looking for the next job really require you to have experience in the industry. Then your education might not be the most important part of your document itself. In other words, the combination of 4 in which order that is can be changed, depends upon what industry you want to go into. So for many of you, you want to pay attention to other section you want to include. That could be your honors and award sections. I encourage you, if you're part of the honors society or honors St. Francis, definitely include that information. If you have received any awards, definitely include those as well. This is the second part that I would say every one of you, I will encourage you to include relevant coursework, especially pertaining to the industry of your choice. So let's say if you're health and promotions, for example, major, definitely include classes related to that because you might not have experiences at the moment to highlight your interest to the industry, but if you're taking 1 or 2 classes already, encourage you to add those because it shows an employer that you have some background knowledge to the industry, but you can talk about what have you learned from those classes to an employer at the interview stage. Again, reminder, your resume is to get you to the interview stage itself. So at that point on, you can talk about anything and everything on your document to highlight who you are, why you're a good fit for the company. The third part is the project experience. This is especially helpful if you're taking any classes or doing any project in class that relate to the industry of your choice that you want to go into, highlight them. It could be a project that you have done on your own as well. So for example, it's just in marketing and you have really cool marketing business or marketing project you've done on your own, highlight them because that gives an employer the context on not just about your education, but also things that you have done for your work outside of classes. Interest can also be something you want to add to your resume as well. Interest can be hobbies and fun fact, I call it the icebreakers of the interview. You want to highlight something that may be interesting for an employer to get to know you during the interview process. If you've done publication, if you're writing blogs and you're putting out good content on many places, you can highlight publications. Competition, if any student athlete in the room, highlight that you're part of the athletic trainings and involvement both within St. Francis or outside can give a better sense of who you are in front of an employer as well. If you're not part of any clubs or organization at St. Francis or beyond, encourage you to get involved with that because it gives an employer a sense of your leadership skill set, your ability to work with people and the environments you're in as well. The other things you want to include is your volunteer work and presentation as well. I apologize it was interrupted. We will continue on. So I'm so sorry. Can you hear me okay and see the screen?
Yes. Yes.
So sorry about that. And we will continue on with this section. Sorry, the internet was a little bit unstable at the college, so I apologize. Like I said to you, you all leadership activity, volunteer work experience, presentation skills, clubs, organizations. If you're part of members of a professional associations outside of college, those are elements you certainly want to include as well at the college or on your resume. So let's dive in deeper into some of the sections. Contact information, definitely have your name bold in a larger format. I always say 2 font size bigger than what you have will be fantastic. Current contact information, that's a part that, for example, I just saw a student and asked, where's the phone number on your information? How can I be able to contact you, right? Definitely include your phone numbers on it, making sure it is current, making sure your voicemail is appropriate so that you know that who you are if an employee contacts you throughout the job search process. If you have a LinkedIn URL, I encourage you to definitely add the LinkedIn URL on it. If you don't know what that is, definitely come by, maybe attend one of the sessions coming up on how to use LinkedIn effectively. That's also a fantastic way for you to connect with any St. Francis College alumni to make connection to the industry as well. Other optional areas you want to include, if you have a full home address, you can include them. You're not required to do that, especially posted on a public site. Definitely you don't have to include the full address on it. But if you're applying for opportunity and a company website, you can certainly include the full address on it. That's not a problem as well. For people who are interested in the creative industry, having a professional website may be a good way for you to stand out. So if you are, for example, graphic design is something you're interested in, add a portfolio, add a website, add something that you can highlight your skill set to an employer will be a very interesting way to stand out with employer as well. Education is another section you want to include. Education can helpfully you have St. Francis College on it. This is an example on the top here where you can include for information pertaining to your education, having your degree type, having your GPA if you're above 3.0 or higher, if you're part of a dean's list or you're part of honors organizations, add those sections on it as well. And like I mentioned early on, you can definitely include your coursework on your documents as well, or any sort of experiences if you have done, let's say, classes from your previous school, if you transfer from, you can certainly do that. If you receive a degree from a previous institution, add the degree on it. So for example, in this case, if you are, let's say, came from BMCC, you can definitely say associate degree if you have a degree received. If you don't, if you transfer from another school and you have received certain credit, you can put the number of credits and your major in that particular institution in your degree type. For the date, if you are currently active in the program, you're not required to put when your start date will be, but it's so important to make sure you put the end date, because the employer wants to know if you're first year, sophomore, junior, senior standing to get a sense of when you're available to work in their organizations. If you're a minor in certain things, definitely add your minors on your in the education section as well. Experience, this is another part that you want to definitely emphasize your experience sections on your documents. So experience can be, like I said, a combination of different examples. It could be your work experience, it could be clubs or organization you're part of, a volunteer experience, or any combination of experience you can highlight from your resume to highlight who you are and your skill set. Definitely in each section, you want to be in reverse chronological order, means that the most recent experiences should go first, even within each of the sections. So let's say in this scenario, the person's work at Whitney, you know, in the Whitney Museums earlier in April, it ends in April, but then the person also worked, it looks like concurrently in a medical industry. You can definitely put it in the order of the end date. So in this case, will be the Whitney Museum first, and then the expert medical after. Within each bullet point, you want to use different action verbs to highlight your experience. You want to describe your experiences in a way to highlight meaningful, transferable skills. Don't discount any part-time job. I've seen people who work at Starbucks, you know, being a barista or coffee shops, or even like in a receptionist. But guess what? Those are really valuable skills to highlight how great you are working with people and customer service during a challenging scenario. All those are essential skill sets to be successful in many organizations. So don't be afraid to say, hey, I worked a different job before. And guess what? Many employers came from where you guys are as well. They may be a barista before that, and they appreciate and value the work that you have done earlier. But definitely, that's your job to sell to an employer that this is actually important skill set that you want to highlight. So definitely start with an action verb first. You can see right here, regularly posting, manage and complete various projects, maintain payrolls, file medical record, resolve conflicts, validate and patients and data, insurance data. Within this first couple of words, I already get a sense of the person's skill set. That's what you want, to start with an action verb, a verb that can describe some of the skill set and elements of your skills. And I will share in a second where you can find a sample list of action verbs from the Career Center as well, and we'll show you where you can find them. You can be able to look at that information on Handshake. Leadership activity, that could be additional sections or replacement of your work experience. If you're actively involved, highlight that. You know, describe your activity, describe your experience and what role do you play, and talk about some of the experiences that you might have. So for example, right here, the students are part of the Black Student Union, and look at the content of the resume, right? It's a spearheaded, organized 5 to 10 meetings, research and educate members, you supervise and provide insight, utilize certain software to organize documents and agenda, right? Even though it's a club and involvement, I can see the student involved in many different types of experiences that they can be able to apply in the work setting as well. And one thing I want to say, If you are working in that particular role at the moment, you can keep it to present, and you can keep everything in simple present tense. If you have worked at another places already, you can keep everything in simple past tense when you describe your bullet point. If you are just actively not getting started, that's okay too. You can list something like the bottom here, activity section with Amnesty International or Multicultural Fair Clubs or any other places that you want to highlight, and it's okay to kind of describe in this format if you don't have a lot of things to add to your bullet point yet. But certainly, if you have something that pretty extensively involved, whether online or in person, include the leadership activities in a detailed description. That could be helpful. Don't forget, campus involvement is a really good way for you to enhance your skill set and your resume. There are many clubs at St. Francis College that you can take advantage of. It doesn't matter if it's a cultural club or pre-professional organizations, any and all of them can be super helpful for you to highlight your interest in the industry that you want to go into. The last section that I talked about early on, the skills sections, is another important part of it. When hopefully at that point, when you get to this particular part of the resume, people are already excited to get to know you and wanting to interview you for the opportunity in their organization. This is the part that they want to get a sense of, okay, what might be some of the software capability, technical knowledge may you have. Many people even put soft skill on it. I personally encourage you not to put the soft skill on this section, but describe them in your bullet point. So you don't want to say good at public speaking, for example. If you describe your bullet point, say you spoke in front of an audience of 200 people during each semester, it implies that you know how to speak publicly versus describe in this bullet point, say public speaking here. In other words, your skills section should highlight software skills or languages, certification, training, licensure, or any additional information that entice the employer to get to know about your skill set. Don't underestimate any software knowledge that you might have. For example, some of you have lived through different Zoom experience. If I were to hire a student worker in my office, I would love to know the students actually know how to use Zoom. From the back end, maybe managing breakout rooms. That could be the reasons why I want to hire you. That could be the reasons why many employers want to work with you. So adding any collaboration software like Microsoft Teams, if you use anything like Slack or any additional project management software, include them, because you just never know what are some of the things you can bring to the table for some of these organizations. If you do include language, make sure you put your level of proficiency. If you're fluent, native fluent, if you're intermediate or working knowledge of or basic level, definitely include some of those as well. And if you have any certifications or training, include them as well. Especially for those of you who may be interested in tech, definitely highlight and elaborate on any software skills that you might be interested in, for sure, in your document. Many of you, if you are a volunteer in many organizations, that can also be a place for you to add additional experience on your document to highlight who you are and how much you can continue to expand on your skill set and bring it to the organization as well. So don't underestimate that. Sometimes people want to see that you have a passion in something that's beyond just going to school or maybe involved in clubs, but you actually have other interests and hobby that you can bring to the company. Certification and training, you have many ways for you to add if you want to highlight certifications or training. And by the way, the college is offering LinkedIn Learning. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's a really free, amazing product out there that you can learn additional trainings available through LinkedIn. There's a learning platform that you can sign up for free as part of being a student at St. Francis College. More information will be available for you shortly as well, so keep an eye out for any email announcement coming from the Career Center on how you can take advantage of that opportunity to sign up for some of the great training. For example, I did a training on how to do Photoshop, during the summer on LinkedIn Learning. So you can definitely use that as a place for you to highlight some of your skill set, your interests, your knowledge to pertain to the industry as well. And you can supplement that to any classes you may take outside of it, if you're doing your own class in Coursera or any other additional open class platform out there, add those onto your document. It doesn't matter if you're coming from the college that you're taking as part of your degree requirement or outside of the college for sure. And one more thing you want to highlight, I don't believe that is available during the pandemic, but keep an eye out for it. Now that everything is coming back, the public library do have something called Tech Connect, which allow you to learn about different technology classes available across the entire New York City area. So some of you say, hey, I really want to learn about how to use Excel. Guess what? Sign up for a class, maybe through New York Public Library, for you to enhance how to use Excel skills or any other software skills throughout the entire borough or other places that you can take it for free. So I say use it while you can, take advantage of these opportunities for sure to enhance your skill sets. So some of you may have heard of the phrase called application tracking system. That's a system when you apply for any company, they're going to ask you to fill the profile, upload your resume to the company website. Behind the scenes, they're using the tracking system to help screen applicants for opportunity and qualification that they may be asking you to do. So it's important for you to make sure your document is appropriate for the tracking system that is available for many companies who are using them. So one thing I always say, look at the job description to see what keywords are they using in the job ads. Trying to mimic as much as you can to customize your resume, your application material to reflect on some of those keywords that they use in the job descriptions to describe your experience. Trying to keep your format simple. This is where I always say to students, one thing I want you to walk away with from today, do not use template. Do not use template. Try not to use any tables, any sections on your document that looks like a template, because some of the tracking system might not be able to see some of these sections to read as the descriptions of the experience that you might have. Try not to make a very fancy headings or block colors into headings, because it's really hard for these tracking systems to read. Avoid typo or acronyms, unless it's a common acronym like BS, Bachelor of Science, BA, Bachelor of Art, that's fine. But if you spell something that has specific unique thing for St. Francis, they may not know what they are. So you want to be very universally, articulating in your document as well. And make sure you complete all the fields in your online application. Don't just skip through the section. If they ask you to copy to add descriptions of your experience in each area, definitely add them. Don't skip those sections when you fill out the online applications with many company websites. Okay? Your bullet point, this is the area that I want to pay attention to on how to write your bullet point, your descriptions of each of your experience. When you see earlier that I talk about the different sections of it, that is where I'm going to want to help you to articulate them. Your bullet points should be clear and concise, like I said to you, 1 to 2 line space for each bullet point. You don't want to go into 3 line space for bullet. You definitely want to keep it very concise. You want to show relevant skill set, not about what you did. So don't tell me that you're responsible for something. Don't tell me you helped others. Talk about what you actually do at that particular experience. Start to use an action verb, facilitate, monitor, oversee, supervise, design. All those are great words to use. Trying to avoid helped, responsible for, because I know you know how to do that, but describe the actual task you do and quantify as much as you can. Trying to write in present tense if you're currently in those roles. Trying to write in past tense if you already completed that experience. And like I said earlier, try not to use any first person's writing. So now I, me, there, his, her, yours, theirs, ours, because you're writing a very concise document, you definitely want to include that. Use industry terminology and lingo. Read through job description. See what some of the common wordings that employees are using to describe the task. Trying to see how can I relate those experiences from my past, experiences and activities that demonstrate that I have relatable skill sets. The STAR method is the important thing I want you to walk away with. This can be useful for interviewing. This can also be useful to describe your bullet point as well. What did you do? What are some of the tasks you did, the actions and outcomes? You can highlight some or all of these in your bullet points. Here's an example of what the methods will be. So you can see the first line, initiate, wrote, and edit. Action verb, right? Initiate, wrote, and edit. What did they do? First, training manual for company tracking systems. So that's part of the content of the task, right? Then what else they do, which cut the training period in half? That's the outcome of the actions. And what happened to this particular task that was adopted across the company and still in use today? It shows impact. So that one line itself give me not just what you did, but the outcome of what you did and the task you do and the implication of the task. So you can see that one line makes a big difference in just telling me that you work on a tracking system or training manual without explaining the task itself. So definitely use that as a way to expand on some of your descriptions of your bullet points. Try not to simplify them. Don't underestimate the detail. Give you the quantity and the scope of the work that you can do in many organizations. Things to avoid: spelling errors, grammar mistakes. Don't make it funny fonts and fonts to be inconsistent everywhere. If you're putting the format in one section but not the other, it just shows that you didn't pay attention to the detail of some of these tasks. So definitely avoid them. Try not to print in different colors. Don't make anything outside of black and white, to be honest, because many companies are going to print your documents in black and white. So if you put in the things in colors, they're going to print in black and white. Just make sure that it reads nicely in black and white format. If it's longer than one page, sometimes it's harder to read. Definitely put the most important thing on the first page. If you need to go on the second page, for some industry that might be appropriate, but trying to avoid them if you can. And use Microsoft Word. Try not to use any other resume template. Simple Microsoft Word to type in your documents. Don't do any resume builder online because those formats is really hard to read as well. Additional resources. So you want to learn about action verb. You want to learn about how to write these resume template formats. I use the word template, but template in terms of the layout and example. Definitely go into Handshake, click on the Career Center page. Under the resources section, there's many things you can definitely utilize within that section as well. And we are here to help. So schedule one-on-one meeting with me, any of our colleagues who Navigate. My appointments will be available on Navigate soon, but feel free to come in during our drop-in hours on Wednesdays and Thursdays throughout the entire semester. We are here to support you throughout your job search, so don't be shy to come into room 2000 for any questions you may have as well. And for that, I'm going to stop the recordings for a moment, and I'm going to launch a